Greetings. In this video, I'd like to address laws and paradigm change. What I'm going to do in this video is present the work of Thomas Kuhn from his 1970 book and look at the idea of laws operating in a way possibly similar, but perhaps not, to the physical sciences and maybe even the social sciences. Now, Thomas Kuhn studied physics and analyzed scientific progress and change in physics. And there have been attempts in a variety of social scientific disciplines, psychology, counseling, sociology, for example, to use this model to see if it works. I applied this model to study changes in therapy over a period of time, and I found that the model had to be modified to account for sub-paradigms, or basically different therapies operating in totally different environments or research worlds, if you will. So the basic premise behind Thomas Kuhn's approach is that you have a dominant paradigm, or the model, the theory, the research methods, the beliefs regarding the scientific area. And then you have what is called normal science, business as usual, until there are anomalies. And then if the anomalies cannot be resolved by the current paradigm, there is a crisis. Trying to address the crisis, we have alternative approaches, and this leads to a revolution, and another paradigm takes over and becomes the dominant one. This is really a cyclical view of science, and we might ask, does law and social control operate in this way? For example, how are laws similar and different to scientific paradigms? Let me back up a moment, and I'll use George Ritzer's early definition of paradigm from the study of sociology, because I think it's very useful. And to quote him from his book on page 7, the paradigm is the broadest unit of consensus within a science and serves to differentiate one scientific community or subcommunity from another. It subsumes, defines, and interrelates the exemplars, theories, and methods and instruments that exist within it. So that's, I think, a helpful idea. And if we view laws as paradigms, then we need to ask, well, how do we analyze the development, implementation, and change of laws, especially as related to social control? Because we know that there's often paradigm competition, so there will be competition between different proposals of laws, and that stakeholders and lawmakers all engage in this type of interactions and behaviors. And eventually we see a law is adopted and implemented, and that becomes, kind of the normal thing at that point in time. But, and Kuhn points out in his 1970 work, to suggest that to be accepted as a paradigm, a theory must seem better than its competitors, but it need not, and in fact never does explain all the facts with which it can be confronted. Page 14. And so basically paradigms are incomplete, and so perhaps laws are incomplete, and perhaps there's also some negative aspects to particular laws that were unforeseen or that didn't seem to be addressed initially. And then we have our different views and our ideas that change over time as well. Certainly, technology has had a huge impact in how we try to create laws and how we try to catch up to the technology with laws. This is very apparent in surveillance, in genomic research, and medical research, and laws regarding terrorism, and so on. So if a law fails, what happens? Do we keep that law? Do we change it? Do we delete it? What do we do? And that kind of gets into the whole idea of analyzing how laws work and then seeing how they change, and then new laws may become implemented. So you can read through the PowerPoints. I kept a lot of information in there to give you a stronger overview. But I think there's important ideas there also. For example, that some problems, in other words, we may not be able to develop laws that successfully address certain issues, or certain issues, even though we have laws, the issues still become a problem, or people ignore the laws or break the law, and so we might find it ineffective. And that gets into the social control aspects in that regard. The law is written on, the law is written in the law books, but then the implementation, how does that carried out, and what happens when the laws are broken? And so we also have consequences attached to those laws, and that can change over time as well. So I think this is an interesting model to look at. I applied it to terrorism, and saw that indeed that with some modifications, it does seem to hold some benefit in explaining how terrorism changes over time, and how our laws regarding terrorism change as well. Also, I think if you look in your textbook in Chapter 5 on legal control, you see the history and emergence of policing, and the paradigm shifts in policing. Again, we could ask, does Kuhn's model work in explaining policing, or in the prison expansion that we've seen? How does that relate? And then in Chapter 8, legal control, racial profiling, hate crimes, and the growth of imprisonment, we could also possibly apply that model as well. And of course, there are many models, and I just selected this one because it's one that I've used successfully in analyzing change in therapies. In one study, I looked at change in the treatment of sex offenders over time, and ask questions. For example, are we moving toward a medical model, or not? Are we combining psychology and medical approaches? Are we having a primary psychological dominant model? Is this different based on gender? Does this differ based on whether the offender is juvenile or an adult? Does it vary, cross culture, and so on? So we can generate a lot of questions that we can conduct research on regarding using this model. And we'll see there's other models we can use as well, but I just wanted to throw that one out there because I think it's a intriguing one, and lots and lots and lots have been written on Thomas Kuhn's work on scientific revolutions. The actual title of his book is The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. And as I mentioned, it was published in 1970, and there's been a lot written about it, and it'll be interesting to see if we continue in that mode. And this wraps up this video. Thank you.